How's that?
Yeah, that's good. I can hear you now. That's good. Yeah.
Hello, mate. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm sat in my wardrobe and you're sat on a shelf.
I'm sat on a chair.
Yeah, my wardrobe's, well, it's a big room and it's my office as well.
All right, okay. Yeah.
How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm getting there, coping well. Yeah. How are you?
Well, I'm all right, really.
Yeah.
Better than a lot of people. Can't moan, I suppose,
I suppose not. No, yeah. Well, thank you for joining me today. It's very kind of you.
Well, thank you for asking me, love. Thank you.
Yeah, good. So yeah, we'll get started. First question: how did you get into the industry?
Well, my mum at the biggest dancing school in Yorkshire.
Yeah.
She passed away in November this year, which was awful. So we've had all that with the pandemic. But my mum had the biggest school, and there was a programme on telly called Junior Showtime where she used to have all the kids. It was a kids' variety show. Mm. But she also choreographed all the local theatres, and she used to win all the dancing competitions. She was very successful. And a lot of famous people went to my mum. But in those days, which is like 1894, I was, if you were, boys didn't really go into dancing. You had the Mickey taken out of you at school and things like that. All the boys were playing football and rugby and stuff. So I used to get roped in as a kid. So when I was 6 years old, I was a Siamese twin in King and I at the Empire Theatre, which doesn't exist anymore, in Leeds. Mm. So I've kind of always been in it, in that way. And I took my dancing lessons and to be close to my mum, because she was never in. And I passed my ballet exam when I was 11, and I highly commend it. And then they dressed me in tights and they had to hold me down. I didn't realise that. So I never did it again after that. That was the end of that. I didn't mind doing the ballet, but I didn't like being in tights. She put me in green fishnet tights and I looked like a bag of sprouts. She said, can you dance on your toes? I said, get somebody taller. And them Cossack dancers, you think for all the money they get, all the money that they earn, you think they dance standing up, wouldn't you? Mm, yeah. But so my mum, obviously that, I did a few bits and bats. I joined a band. I play guitar and stuff. Now I sang a bit in folk clubs and things. And then I got together with a lad that was going to my mum's dancing school, who could sing and dance and play guitar. And we went to Butlins in 1970s Redcoats. And we went on Opportunity Knocks in about 1971 or 72. Yeah. With Huey Green. And then we started doing the clubs, working men's clubs. And then we split up. He wanted to do more pop star stuff, and I was more interested in more entertaining and comedy and everything else. So we parted company. I did a double act with my girlfriend for a bit, toured Norway and all that sort of stuff. And then I bit the bullet, which was hard for me to do because I'm not the most confident of people, believe it or not, and went on my own in the probably about 75, 76, something like that, and started doing the clubs, and the rest of it's history, really. But that's how it started. So really, I've been in it all my life, to be honest.
Yeah. So as audiences changed.
Anyway.
Pardon?
Up to now. And when I say all my life, it's only up to now, of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So have the audiences changed a lot over the years, do you think? Or have they sort of...
Yeah, most of them have died off, so there's a different lot that come along. Well, yeah, no, it's a totally different thing. I mean, I found a VHS cassette of me in a working men's club in 1983, tap dancing. But which I'm very proud of, tap dancing. I can't do it anymore because I've had lots of motorbike accidents. But and I broke my foot in half and all that, which is another story. But when it pans round the audience, it's a Saturday night and it's at a club called Westminster Recreational Club, Doncaster, which is more of a mining sort of area. And it pans around the audience, and all the men have got, because it's Saturday night, they're out with their wives, they're dressed up, they've got a shirt and a tie on. The ladies are dressed up. All the ladies are drinking halves of lager, no glasses of wine. The ashtrays are absolutely mounded up with fag ends, and there's a cloud going around the room. But you can almost sense the atmosphere. I mean, I used to do clubs and you couldn't see. The smoke used to make my eyes stream, and it was a totally different thing. But nowadays, I don't want to sound like I'm an old misery, but they don't get dressed up to go to the theatre. It's changed, and they were out for a night out. Whereas now, I think because of what TV's done in these reality things, where everybody's hooting and shouting out and all that, I find that you get that more of a crowd control officer these days. And they're all. I mean, they're all drunk at 8 o'clock. Sometimes they don't go on till, in the adult shows, they go on till 10 at night or something, and they're all tanked up on drugs and booze and stag and hen nights of the work. If I say a hen party, I'm terrified. Well, you never used to get that in the days of the 70s, just before the miners' strike and when a lot of them shut. It was a whole different world. So I have seen a lot of changes in my time, but I still make a living out of it, of course, and I still enjoy it, except obviously I haven't worked for ages now because of everything that's going on. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So, how do you handle an audience that are a bit rowdy, or they don't tend to find some of the jokes funny? How do you sort of handle those types of audiences? Because I can't imagine it's easy.
Well, no. I have a friend who's we met 30 years ago when we were both on New Faces, and we've stayed pals ever since. So we often, and we're very honest with each other, so we often will talk about this sort of subject. But there was, like one particular night, I turned up at a football ground. I was in the function room, and there was no stage, no lights. They'd sold tickets at 20 quid a time. Yeah. And there was nowhere for me to work or get changed. So I managed to find like a drum riser. You know what they use, like a drum riser, what they set a kit of drums up on. Yeah. They found one of them and set it up in the middle of the room under a light. And I managed to work in a sort of circular fashion, and all. We was talking about it. And he said, which is very, very true, it's just experience, years and years and years of experience. You can handle these situations where perhaps when I was in my 20s, I wouldn't have been able to handle that. Yeah. And I remember one particular night, it's women heckling me, which is always difficult. It's difficult to insult a woman. So like I said about hen parties and things, there's certain things I won't repeat here that I do say to them. But, and I'm always armed with a lot of stuff, but I often find the best stuff is when it comes from you rather than, it's hard to say without swearing, but yeah, that's fine. It's like if I want to listen to an arsehole, I'll fart. Right. Do you know what I mean? Those kind of things. Yeah. But it's often difficult with a woman. And one particular night, the woman was ruining the act, not just for me, but for the people who paid money to come and see her. I tried the heckler stoppers. She wouldn't shut up. Yeah. I did about an hour and 20 minutes. And in the end, I said, I'm going to go now. But my sound guy, I have a sound guy that comes around with me. I've got lots of cues and musical things and sound effects that keeps it interesting rather than just standing there as a man on the mic. I'm more of an entertainer rather than a stand-up comedian as such. Or people call me that. Yeah. So I'm talking to my sound guy who's made them, and I said, if you were on fire, I'd dial 998 and all this sort of stuff to him. And the woman, when I turned around, she was on the stage, absolutely drunk out of her brains. She was on the stage with me. Well, that was, I'd had enough by then. So I said good night to everybody. I said, you've been a brilliant audience, except watch where my eyes go. And looked at her, and I put the mic in the stand and shoved it in front of her. And I whispered in her ear, there you are, love, that's what you wanted all night. You'll get on with it. And I walked off. Yeah. And it all kicked off in the club then. There was fighting, broke out and everything. Honestly, it was... But those, and I got a couple of emails from people saying, listen, I could count these things on one hand that have happened in over 50 years. So otherwise I wouldn't do it. If it were like that every night, I wouldn't do it. Yeah. But I had a couple of emails from people that said, after all those years in the business, I could have handled it better. I didn't need to make a fool of this woman and all that. And I said, well, look, I'm an entertainer. I'm not a crowd control officer. And also, if you've got a woman on stage that's drunk, what if she falls off and breaks her arm and things like that? Who's responsible for that?
Yeah.
So, you know, occasionally it is hard, though. It's drink, really, that's the main problem, especially in the clubs. It's drink. And I like to get on as early as I possibly can. So there's one particular venue where I've done it for 20 odd years, and it's got worse and worse over the years. And the thing is, they sell out, I'm pleased to say, because of me. Yeah. So you've got a room with 300 or 400 people in, and they do a meal and everything, but the waitresses are all young girls, no experience, and they can't get the food out quick enough. So it got to a point when I was going on at 11:15 at night. Yeah. Well, as I say, they're drunk when they get there at 7:30, 8 o'clock. What a chance have I got at that time? So I said, I'm not doing it anymore. Yeah, I don't get any pleasure. I dread going there. It's scary. That place was where the one I was talking about with the woman, the same place. I said, I'm going to pack it up. Well, the man who owns it all, the multi-millionaire man, he's a nice chap. Like I say, I've known him. I've seen his business grow, and I said, I can't do it. I'm too old. Yeah. I don't get any. I'm too old to prostitute myself. I'd rather do something I enjoy doing than something I'm dreading doing and hate it and all that. So he did his best to try and get the food to go out in a reasonable time. And I think the last time I went there, he got me on about 9:30, which is all right. 9:30, you've got a bit of a chance, you know, but it does get, I'm not saying it's all like that, but it does get like that. It's like in theatres, for instance, when I've done all sorts of, but a play that I was in last year, I think, you notice that people, the theatres allow them to have their drinks, you know, plastic glasses, and they're drinking in the audience, and then they're getting up and going out for a wee and then coming back in and all. Well, they'd never do that in the old days. No. You know, they had more respect for the people on the stage, which I don't think they do now. I think everybody thinks they can do it. Yeah,
I went to a show last year and the woman sat behind me, had a full McDonald's out throughout the entire performance, and she was just munching away behind me, and it was just the most annoying, and she's on the phone as well, on and off on the phone.
That's the other thing, phones.
Yeah, and it was the most frustrating thing in the world because we were second row, so the cast could see what she was doing. It was blatantly obvious what she was doing. Yeah. And I turned around to her and I was like, do you mind putting that away, please? It's annoying me. And she's like, oh, well, I'm hungry, so I'll eat before you come then. Or eat in the interval. You know, don't eat during the show. She packed it all away and was in the mood for the rest of the show. But I've had a lot of experiences.
What kind of show was it, Dominic?
It was Mamma Mia in the West End.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so, yes. I mean, if it's a musical thing,
yeah,
you know, you can just carry on if you're singing and that. With all due respect, I don't mean to decry anything that they do, and it's a brilliant show.
Yeah.
But as a comedian, it is difficult. I was in this play once, and it was called Seriously Dead, and it was all about dead people. And I had a whole, like 2 pages of dialogue where I'm talking to a dead person in a coffin.
Yeah.
And it was a wooden floor, and this lady had high heels on, and she walked from my stage left to stage right to go out through the doors to the toilet. And then 5 minutes later, the doors open and she walks all the way back across. And as a comic, that's gold dust. Right. I could have, as a stand-up comic, if you like, I could have ripped her apart. But because I'm in a play, you can't break the third wall. You mustn't, you know, I could have stood up and, you know, had a bit of fun with it. But I couldn't do that, and that was hard. I had to bite my lip, and it was hard to concentrate on because nobody was listening to me. They were watching this woman. I've sat, funnily enough, I was talking about Hastings, White Rock Theatre at Hastings, and I was there one night, years ago, doing the adult show, and hardly anybody in, like, they hadn't advertised, usual story. And there was a bloke, he was Canadian, he used to follow me about, him and his wife. And they were there, he used to heckle me a bit, which sometimes it does you a favour. You know, it's funny.
Yeah.
When you've got like an audience representative, and in fact, I sometimes select somebody to be the audience representative. And so the interval came and they weren't there. They didn't come back. Right, so I'm at about 10, and I said to her, look, I sometimes, has anybody gone? You know, so I'll say end of the first half. I'm sorry I've gone over time. I have done a lot longer than I should have done, but there's a good reason for that. I've got a feeling you're all going to piss off in the interval, right? So there's a joke about him disappearing in the interval. Well, of course, when I come on stage, these two people sat right in front. They weren't there.
Yeah.
So I know, I must have upset them. So I used them a bit in the act, the fact that they'd gone. Well, 10 minutes later, they walked in with fish and chips. Sat at the front with fish and chips, smelling of salt and vinegar. In the old days, you get thrown out of a theatre for that, because there used to be signs saying no odoriferous backstage and that. No odoriferous foods, fish and chips and all that. If you had them in there, the manager would chuck you out.
Yeah.
So it's a different ball game. Sometimes you can use it to your advantage if they have respect for you. Sometimes they're so loud and noisy and they're not even looking at you. It's just between themselves. You know, I've been on stage when people have had a radio there listening to a football match. I mean, what can you say to that except I might as well go home?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a singer, you know, you can battle through it, can't you?
Yeah, yeah. So have there been other jokes that you used to be able to do back in the day that you find you can't do now, or do you find?
Absolutely.
Yeah, is it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm very, very careful, and I look back on things and I think, I mean, it used to, obviously it was a different world then in the 70s, you know, with the Mind Your Language, Love Thy Neighbour, all those kinds of programs on telly, Till Death Us Do Us Part, and those programs, and even so, the jokes which I wouldn't repeat now would be about, could be about immigration and, you know, like Bernard Manning type of thing, you know, that kind of stuff. And when I was young, I didn't know any difference. And I'm ashamed to say that I did do stuff like that. And now, obviously, I wouldn't, because even though it's my adult show, the last thing I want to do is upset people. I want them to forget their problems and have a nice time. But if it's in a theatre, I do 2.5 hours. If it's a club, about an hour and a half, really, because they get fed up of laughing, basically. There's only so much you can do. But I've worked with these comics in the past, and also a friend of mine was Charlie Williams, Sammy Thomas, all these guys that were black guys that was doing, you know, Charlie used to say, if you don't behave, I'll come and live next door to you. Or he'd say, he said to her, I was working with him once and it was brilliant. It's my favourite line, I can't tell you this. He said to a lady in the audience, he said, look at her down there. She's got blonde hair, she's got black eyebrows, she's got blue eyeshadow over her eyes, she's got red lips, she's got rouge here, and she's got a pale face, and they call me coloured. Isn't it lovely, that? Yeah. You know, so he was lovely, Charlie. So obviously nowadays, I'm quite surprised sometimes about some of the comedians, not mentioning any names, who can get away with being offensive, and it's part of their persona. It doesn't really suit me to be offensive, so I'm pretty careful really on. I mean, I've had letters, I've had loads of letters. I used to do a joke about Jesus, which is a funny joke. I'm not a religious person, and I was in Blackpool, and they used to have a theatre chaplain, and I ran the gag past the theatre chaplain, and he found it highly amusing, and because it wasn't against, really, it was just about Jesus walking on the water, really, and so he's and his disciples at his side, but he's having to swim, and they get halfway out, because he's seen an oil rig on the horizon on the Sea of Galilee, and they get halfway out, and the disciple turns around to come back, and Jesus said, why don't you walk on the pipeline with me? Right, so that's the joke. So, but I got a lot of really horrible, nasty letters about that, so eventually I dropped it. Another one was blind people. There's a couple of jokes about a blind man, and I have a friend of mine who's blind. She's absolutely totally blind. And of course, every time, if anything comes up where I can find something that mentions a blind person, I always ring her up and say, what do you think to this? Would you find this offensive? And in a club I did, when I was about to go on stage, I noticed a blind man with a white stick in the audience. In fact, I'd helped him to the gents' toilets. So when he came out the gents, because I come on from, in a club, I can come on from the back of the room. I don't go in dressing room and all that.
Yeah.
I get that. It works like clockwork, man. I turn up dressed already.
Yeah.
My sound guy puts the mic in my hand. The music starts playing. I walk down the room, jump on stage. At the end of it, I jump off, walk down the room. I'm in my car and gone.
Yeah.
So I don't have to mess about.
No.
So I asked him about the joke. I told him the joke quickly. And I said, would you mind if I did this joke? And he went, no, that's because the blind man gets the laugh. He gets the last laugh. So it's a laugh against the normal person. Well, that's great, that. Although for some people, like I had a letter, I was in Chesterfield and some councillor was in and threatened me with not being able to work the area and all that. And I said, well, do you, you know, I'm my own censor. I decide whether it's right or not right. I'll listen to what people say. I did a joke about an epileptic, which is a funny story, but I dropped that out because I did have a couple of complaints about that, and I thought it's not worth it, you know. So I try the hardest not to. It's much more difficult these days than it used to be, I think. Although I must have been one of the last comics in the world to say the F word, and it's got even worse now. And it's even rare when I use that even in my adult show, unless I have to do. But you know, it's much more. Everything's different now. It's a whole different ball game. Yeah, I think it's you know, depends which way you look at it. I mean, a lot of the gigs that I do, you won't see one of these new guys being able to do them. To be honest, no. I would defy them to be able to do it. Yeah, but it's, you know, it's not everybody's cup of tea what I do. So, you know, fair enough. Yeah, you know, as long as I'm working, I'm making people laugh, and I must be doing something right, I think. Yeah.
So who has influenced your comedy, if anyone? Does anyone influence your comedy?
Well, I grew up in the old-fashioned days, you know, when it was Morecambe and Wise and Tommy Cooper and Dick Emery and all those kind of people. Oh, that's what I grew up with. Because I'm 70 next Monday, so I can't believe it myself. Yeah, allotments are looking attractive. But so in them days, and then it became Cannonball and Freddie Starr and those kinds of people, who then eventually became my friends, and I worked with them, and so that was, you know, weird really. But I don't have one particular person that I've you know, I used to like Chick Murray and people like that. Yeah. I loved Cannonball and Little and Large, of course. I worked with them a lot. But then as time's gone on, I've just really started to get more into, Alan Carr and people like that make me laugh. So I've always steered away because I don't want to get too influenced by anybody and start nicking their material. But there was two comics that would spring to mind who are both friends of mine. One is Johnny Casson, who's, I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah, I've seen him live. Yeah, he's really good. Yeah, he's
great. He's getting a bit, like we all are, we're all getting a bit old now, but he used to be in a band, you know, called the Cresters, who was signed up by Brian Epstein that managed the Beatles. So his career goes back years. And the other one is Mick Miller. Yeah. And Mick has, well, both of them have this wonderful timing, which you can learn from. And when I was starting out in the business and also looking at comedy and thinking about, because I loved the power of it, I used to nick a bit off them. So I'd nick a gag here and a gag there. But what I found was I was doing it like them. Yeah. I was almost doing an impression of them. So it took me a while then to realise that I had to find my own personality, my own identity, so that I was different to them. So I've always steered away from looking at people. But funnily enough, those are the kind of people that have influenced me. I think that they're, you know, great, proper comics that go around, you know.
Yeah.
Not getting loads of telly, but they're there, you know.
Mm. So you've been doing panto in Bradford now for 20 odd years. What has that been like? I mean, to do such a long stint in one theatre must be, you know, it must get, you know, does it get tiring, or do you sort of enjoy going back to Bradford every year?
I love it, mate.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. I can't tell you how much I love it. It's going to upset me now talking about it. It should have been our last night on Sunday. Yeah. And I had to go into Bradford, and I drove for ages. I haven't been out for ages. And my wife just got me a cap so I can look out the window. It's only another 3 lockdowns to Christmas. And I drove past the theatre, and I had a massive lump in my throat. It was so sad to see it empty, and you know, and I've missed it. I've had the rotten time because obviously the panto didn't go ahead, but then I was in negotiation with the Alhambra to put on my own show, which I've done before, but with a small. I could have done. They only wanted like an hour or so, you know, no interval. Because people are going to the toilet and things. So it would have been dead easy to put a family show on, which I've done before, Blackpool and all this kind of thing, with another couple of people. So, you know, you can mix and match, and so there's always something happening, and make it interesting and visual for a family show, like I've done in Bridlington and Scarborough and Blackpool. So I've got loads of stuff to pull from. It would be dead easy to do it, with lots of visual things like guitar amps blowing up and falling in the audience and all that. So, and I've got a radio control dog that pees on them and stuff like that. But and then a couple of nights of my adult show, but it would only been for about a week as a token, really. But then they decided not to do that. But I'd already started learning me panto, started then working out what I was going to do and who could I work with to do this show. And then they said no. Then they said I could do. I was going to go to Manchester Opera House with Jason Manford, and I booked a flat for a week and stayed in it one night, and then the next day it was all cancelled, so I never even got to rehearse. But I'd learnt it all. So it was a bit of a up and down time, very depressing when everything's shut. It was almost a relief when they said, "That's it." You're not, you know, there wasn't the ipping and butting out. Is it on? Is it off? So it was a bit of a relief, really, although I can't wait to get back on the stage now. I've forgotten what the question was, really.
It was, so what has it been like to perform?
Oh, you've forgotten it, no.
I had to look down there for a minute. No, so at what point during the year do you start thinking about panto, or was it an all-year thing?
No, definitely not. People are absolutely amazed when I tell them. For me, because I've been going there for 20 years, 20 odd years, I have a rapport with the director and everybody really, and the Kudos, the company that put it on, I have to give them, over this pandemic, they've been unbelievably supportive, trying to get these shows on. They did the Palladium, it's the same.
I went to see it,
Did you?
Yeah, I went on the first night. I went to see it. Well, no, the second night, but it was really good. It was emotional because I've been in the theatre previously since lockdown. I went to see a few shows last year after lockdown. It was over, but to be back at the Palladium sing panto there, it was quite an emotional experience. And yeah, it was a different show to normal. Because obviously they've taken bits and pantos they've done there previously, but it was sort of nice to be back watching a show in that, and then it obviously closed and that. But
well, it would have been a different show. It's like the fact of getting people shouting out, that kind of thing, which is all panto. It's all audience participation, so it can't be as difficult. No chucking anything out of the audience, no going in the audience. Socially distanced, we would have had to sat on a chair, our own chair. You couldn't mix rehearsals. We had a COVID monitor, a person there who was there specifically to make sure you obeyed the rules. No social life. They didn't even want you to come home at Christmas in Manchester. To keep everybody safe was the idea. I would have done it, but I think it would have been, I would have found that difficult, really.
Mm.
Yes. Once again, I forgot what you were saying. Don't forget I'm a pensioner.
That's fine.
Yes, it would have been different to do it.
Yeah.
I think totally different, really. What was the question again, Dominic?
It was, at what point in the year do you start thinking about panto?
Right. So what happens with me is, which may be different to everybody else, I have our director's called Ed Curtis, who's he's a smashing fella. I get on like a house on fire with him. And we work together brilliant. He understands, sometimes you get people who don't understand comedy.
Yeah.
And you can't show them what you're going to do in rehearsals because I need an audience.
Yeah.
So he trusts, you know, there's an element of trust.
Yeah.
So what will happen is about maybe, we'll have a meeting, probably July, something like that. When we sit, he maybe come to my house and we'll sit in my kitchen and just run through a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
And then he'll go away. And then August time, maybe September, I'll get a rough guide of script, which will say, Billy Pearce comes on stage left and he goes off stage right. Well, what happens in the middle is up to him.
Yeah.
Right. So so I put try and put the meat on the bones, if you like.
Yeah.
And my ideas, and then we bounce it back down to him. He has a look at it, but I'm not precious about things if he doesn't like stuff. So last year I wrote a whole lot about Andrew and Pizza Express and stuff like that. Well, the theatre didn't want that, so all that had to go out the window. So we never mentioned Prince Andrew, which I'm fine about. So it's that kind of thing. We bounce it backwards and forwards. But believe it or not, then when you get the finished script, we would start, which then goes out to the rest of the cast. We turn up on a Monday morning, everybody says hello, and we'll probably start, that's at 10 o'clock, and we have a cup of coffee, and the theatre makes sandwiches and cups of tea and coffee and stuff. They really look, and we introduce everybody, all the front of house staff, and everybody has a big meeting. They all introduce themselves, it's lovely. And then they all go away, the dancers go in one room, and all the actors and principals all go in another room, and we start then. And I'm off the script by then. I'm not on the script, which puts the fear of God up everybody, because I know what I'm doing. Also, we go through the stuff that I've written the night before, because sometimes I leave it till the last minute because I'm doing gigs anyway, and I rewrite things. So when we start, we all sit round the table quick, and he says, right, what have you done? So I show him what we've done, so we have to, and you can see the faces drop because they've learned it. But when they see it, they realise that actually, I don't have time, it's just better and funnier, and I'm generous, and I give them funny lines. So hopefully we work together as a team, then they have more respect as well, because I'm not just out for myself. I'm not selfish. So then we'd probably start literally walking through it, and so we do that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then if there's anything like physical stuff, fight scenes, falling off walls and stuff like that you need to rehearse onto crash mats and stuff, that's Saturday mornings. They have Sunday off then to go through it all. Back in the rehearsal room Monday. Tuesday, hopefully in the theatre, or Wednesday. So you need to know it by then, because it's all tech running. So you're on and off, we have your costume on, and it can take, lighting and all that goes on forever. Yeah. I hope I'm not teaching you how to suck eggs here, Dominic, because you look very young, and I'm sure you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
So by then, the show opens literally Friday or Saturday. So it works out about 8 days to put the whole thing on, which is pretty amazing, really, because our shows in Bradford are, I would say, West End quality, the lights and the sound and everything. Sometimes when I turn up there on rehearsing, I see like 4 or 5 Arctic truck lorries unloading all this sound and lights, and I just look at it, I think that's all to make me look good. Yeah. All these thousands of people, it's just, it is, like I say, I've been lucky and I've done it, and I think I've missed it so much this year. I really have. I didn't think I would, to be honest. I thought it'd be nice to have a Christmas off, which it has been. I always say it's mixed feelings. It's like watching your mother-in-law drive off a cliff in your brand new Mercedes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're talking to my mate. I've had a look at you. Who did you have on last week? My mate, you had the comic on.
Oh, so Andy Ford I had on last week. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
Yes, he's lovely, isn't he?
No, he's really lovely. Yeah, he's lovely.
Yeah.
The week before that, I talked to Damien Patton, the nephew of the Chocker Brothers. Had a conversation. Had a conversation with him. He's lovely as well. Yeah. So I've talked to some good people. And I've been lucky so far. It's been nice to hear sort of different stories and that from back.
Last year.
Yeah. I saw him in Panto back when he was in Southampton a couple of years ago with Barry on his last Panto and that.
I went to the funeral and that. Very sad. Yeah, very sad. But they were lovely company. Faye Tozer was lovely. Out of steps. Yeah, I think Panto's one vehicle. Well, one of the last things when we used to do summer seasons and have, you know, lots of famous people working with them. The Osmonds. I've worked with loads of them. And funny enough, I was talking to somebody the other day who's got a video of me with Jerry Marsden in 1990. It was 30 years ago, and it was just after the Hillsborough.
Yeah.
And You'll Never Walk Alone was in the charts, and he was kind enough to let us use that as part of the finale. So we sang. I sang "You'll Never Walk Alone" with Jerry and the Pacemakers on a stage with 1,400 people standing up, going like that, and it was like being a pop star. And it was one of those abiding, emotional moments of seeing that, you know, when you can, something happens. So again, I've forgotten what you asked me, but Panto is one of those places where you can be lucky enough to, you know, John Inman was a great friend of mine, and, you know, people like that. I've been, John Chalice, we're still in contact, me and John.
Yeah.
You know, all these Nolans, I've known them for years anyway. In fact, year 2000, when my son was born, the summer season we did, 4 months in Blackpool.
Yeah.
It was me, John Inman, Jimmy Cricket, Nolans, Kev Orkian, about 8 dancers and a band.
Yeah.
I mean, where would you get that now?
No, you wouldn't. No.
You know, I was so, I didn't realise at the time how bloody lucky I was really to be able to do all that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I have been lucky.
Yeah. So who have been some of your favourite people to work with over the years? Who have you enjoyed most?
I think I love John Inman. He was so kind to me, and he was such a gentleman. And he was. He said to me one day, "Have you ever thought about becoming a water rat?" I went, "No, me a water rat." And he was King Rat at the time, and I found myself as guest speaker at the Grosvenor House Hotel, sat on the top table with Betty Boothroyd, French and Saunders, Adrian Edmondson, all sat there. I went for a wee in the toilet, and I'd got Frankie Vaughan on the left of me, and Joe Brown on my right, stood having a wee. I was in this dream. My speech, I wrote a whole speech, a poem about people being in pantomime that shouldn't be in it. Sportsmen, politicians, taking our jobs, right? So they loved that. It went down a storm. And as I came out the toilet after that, a man came up to me and he said, "Billy, would you mind, there's a lady over here who would love to meet you." And I said, "Yes, of course." I said, "Who is it?" He said, "It's Eric Morecambe's wife." Oh, bloody hell. I mean, so I think I'm still mates with John Chalice.
Yeah.
We got on great. We do speak to each other occasionally. Who else would I say? I've got on, me and the Nolans, Maureen, and do you know, it's awful to say this, my memory's getting worse. The lady that died, anyway, she passed away not too long ago. I think it was her last panto with me. But she was lovely. Faye Tozer was lovely. They've all been lovely. Really, I can't think of... It would be much easier to tell you the ones that I don't like, which is, that one. There's not many people really that I haven't managed to get on with it, because it can be a bit like that showbiz. It's very selfish. People look after their own corner, but hopefully, generally speaking, in pantos, when I first started doing panto, I mean, people go, it's never been, I remember the days when I was starting out and people were horrible to me.
Yeah.
So my first panto, without mentioning any names, I had a person that I was working with, and I made the mistake of saying to this person, you've done, 40 pantomimes, and this is my first one.
Yeah.
If you see me doing anything wrong, or you think you might be able to help me, I'd really appreciate it, your experience and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, he just took that as a go to try and mess me up every time. He taught me, but what I didn't realise at the time was that he taught me the things like how to stop somebody getting a laugh by stamping on the punchline, how to pull focus, how to upstage somebody, all those. So if anybody tries it on with me, I had a certain person who really did go out of his way to try and make me. Well, the funny thing, one thing he did was upstage. When you've got to turn around and talk to somebody like that. Yeah. So your face is not towards the audience. Yeah. So you turn around to talk to him. So it was. So we started backing up the stage, right? So going like that. So in there, I just walked forward and did all my lines out front. And he never tried it again. No. It's those kind of things. So in actual fact, the bloke had done me a favour. Yeah. And by teaching me these rules, but I've never forgotten him. No. And we have come across paths since. But it was my first panto, and I think Max Boyce, he was lovely. He's a guy that was very big at the time in Wales. I lose track of the amount of people that I've been lucky enough to work with. I tell you, lovely people. Mel Bredovich was lovely. Mel and Sue, she was lovely. I did a musical where I had to be a Bosnian. Where it was talking, very Eastern European. And we did a week at the Alhambra. And when I got to the Alhambra, it was the first time I was going to be working with Mel. Yeah. And I said to the, normal chat with the stage door lady, I know them all and all that, hey, Billy, and all that. And she gave me my key. So I went down to thinking that I would be in number 2 dressing room or whatever. And my key wouldn't go in the thing. So I went back up to stage door and I said, my key won't go in the, you give me the wrong key. She said, no, I've given you the right key. You're in number 1 dressing room. And when I'm normally in pantomime. Yeah. I said, no, but it's not, she's the star, not me. She said, no, Mel knows how many times you've been here and that you're always in that dress. So she's gone in the small one next door. Yeah. She wants you to have that room. Yeah. I mean, how nice is that? No, it's really nice. Really nice. I mean, I've met some, I'm not great at keeping up. I'm quite an insulated person. I'm not great at staying in contact with people. I don't go on Facebook much or, Twitter and all that. I'm not great at all that. So I'm not very good. Although, excuse me, this COVID thing has made us, I've had long conversations with people who've got more time now. So I had a long conversation with John Conway that used to be, he was one of the instigators of Kudos with Nick Thomas. He's no longer with him. Yeah. But he was always a person who you always felt he was rushing you off. Do you know what I mean? He's one of those people that puts the phone down without saying goodbye. Once the conversation went bang, and you'll go, so I had a long conversation. He was talking. In fact, it was him who told me about. He looked at this video he'd got of Jerry Marsden and what a great show it was and all that. So I think that you people have got more time now to. He was a big part of my life, John Conway. I used to love working with him. So, yeah, you know, I don't have too many friends. Only Rudy West. He's a comedian that I mentioned that I was on New Faces with.
Yeah.
I speak to him on a regular basis. We've been pals all these years, and our lives seem to run parallel in a lot of ways. He's mainly a cruise ship performer now.
Yeah.
So of course he's sat at home twiddling his thumbs and all. So but I have lots of friends, loads and loads of friends in showbiz. I'm not a great waterer, I have to say.
Yeah.
I don't go to the meetings and all that. So they're very passionate about it all, and it's all a bit, you know. But I'm proud of being a waterer, and I was proud when they asked me. But I'm not great at the, you know. And half the time when they have lodge meetings, I'm always working, doing some gig somewhere, trying to keep it all afloat.
Yeah.
So that's it. So in other words, I don't have any friends at all. Yeah, I do. I've got more than I actually know.
No, good. So one final question: if you could do any panto, where would it be, or what would it be, and who would you do it with?
Oh, well, I'd have to say Bradford or Lambert, because otherwise I'd upset them all. I've done loads of time at the Grand in Blackpool, and I used to love the Grand in Blackpool. It's a beautiful theatre. It's a Matcham theatre, and in those days there was a wonderful atmosphere of everybody pulling together to save it, because it nearly turned into a car park or a bingo hall or something. Yeah. So it was you know, it would be awful if a place like that went.
Yeah.
So I love that. But panto wise, it's a difficult one, really. I mean, if you could have people alive or dead, then I would definitely say John Inman and John Chalice, all my favourite people. And Linda Bellingham is the lady I was trying to think of.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Linda Bellingham. I mean, a very gracious lady, a lovely lady who's down to earth and nice to work with. They're always lovely people to work with. There's a guy who has his own circus, which is a circus man. His parents, grandparents, and all that. They're actually Germans, but he's English. But he speaks German. And I did panto with him, and we did the slosh, which is clown, circus clown. Is Jan Erik? They call him Jan Erik Brenner, and so he used to bring on a big truck. He had circus truck. Yeah. A great big bread mixer, industrial bread mixer, a huge, you know, take a forklift to pick it up. So he'd be in every day mixing the slosh, right, with this formula that was honed, you know, over years and years and years, all different colours. He'd be in hours early with buckets of boiling water and mixing it, getting it just right, in perfect timing for the scene. If you mix it too early, it sags down and goes to water. So he'd have this beautiful slosh, and we used to get the biggest laughs of this man with this slosh. It was wonderful to work with, and I'm very proud because his circus, because in the show he was called Phipps, so I used to call him Mr. Phipps. Yeah. So his circus is now called, because of what I called him, Mr. Phipps Big Top Circus. It's beautiful. They go to Germany. Well, I suppose they're not now, but and it's all done like a Premier Inn. It's all purple and cream. Yeah. All the tent, the trucks, the wagons, and everything else is all purple and this light cream. So he was lovely. I'd love to do panto with him again if it was ever possible. Energetic. You need energy. People who've got energy to go on there, and you know, I'm like a kid when I'm on that stage in a pantomime. It gets harder the older you get, of course, to be as physical as that. But I do love it. I mean, the last one I did with Christopher Biggins. Yeah. I opened up on a hoverboard, you know, whizzing around on a hoverboard with a It had a Zimmer frame with an L plate on it, and I just whizzed around and pretended to come off it. I did come off a few times. He was nice, Christopher Biggins. I mean, he was just wonderful to have around.
Yeah.
You know, his infectious laughter, you could hear that all the time. He's always upbeat, and he was great. You know, those are the kind of people that you need. So, I mean, I think there'd be probably 100 people in it if they could have everybody that you liked.
Yeah.
I hope I don't upset anybody by forgetting.
No.
That I should have remembered. Yes, I've been very lucky with all those lovely people.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody that I particularly wouldn't want to work with again. There's one bloke that he's passed away anyway, but he was pretty vile. He didn't like Bradford. He didn't like the builders. He didn't like the accent. He didn't like kids. I mean, how can you be in a pantomime? You don't like kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, he's a real misery. He was, you know. He used to wind me up, but I've learned over the years to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah.
Just go on and do it, because the last thing you want is atmospheres and all that. Let them get on with it. As long as I know I'm all right, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
And the kids, I mean, there's a lady that does Bradford. She's done it for the last few years, and she's just a tiny little dancing school she's got.
Yeah.
She's called Sarah Packham, and she lives up on Yorkshire Moors, and they rehearse in this little tiny school hall. But the kids are brought up with respect for the theatre, and they have. She doesn't just teach them how to sing and dance. She teaches them about how to be and how to behave and what you should do and what you shouldn't do in the theatre. You know, and the kids are just one, and they're all mates, and some of them have gone on to be stars and gone on to different things. They've gone on Royal Ballet and stuff like that. You know, she's marvellous. There's kids in America dancing in shows, or was anyway.
Yeah.
So I'd always have her, you know, with the kids in the pantomime, because the kids are just brilliant. And I love working with the kids. And also it does you a favour with the kids in the audience, because they like it. They like it if you have a bit of a laugh with the kids.
Yeah.
So what do you do then, Dominic? I mean,
well, I just graduated from Solent University with a musical theatre degree.
Have you?
Yeah, so that's...
You know more than I do then. You know more than I do.
Well, I think. So I graduated there last year, hoping to break into the industry. I got an agent towards the end of last year. Got all my headshots, but obviously all the theatres are shut, so I'm trying to eventually make it as an actor. But I had an audition last year for the North Pier Panto in Blackpool. I was
Tony Joe.
Yeah, it's for Buttons. I was up for Buttons for the North Pier in Blackpool.
Who did you audition with?
It was Maven Casting. They did it for, but yeah, it was it was a self-tape, so I did all the filming and that, and then sent it over to my agent.
Well, good luck with that then. I've spent a lot of time on that North Pier.
Yeah, but yeah, so at the moment I'm just working at a mental health hospital as a catering assistant.
Oh, bless you.
So I had my COVID vaccine last Friday, so I've done all that now. But yeah, I'm just ticking along. Yeah,
that's a relief then, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
The vaccine. Funnily enough, I've done a radio interview this morning, and somebody asked me a similar question, which was for any aspiring actors and actresses, or you don't say that anymore, actors, or comedians, or what advice would you give them? And I said, well, first of all, you've got to want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not sure, or you know, you have to really, because it's not the job, it's a passion.
Yeah.
And if you're not sure whether you want to do it or not, there's always somebody standing behind you that would kill your mother to replace you. So you need to be able to be strong and definitely want to do it, because it's a tough life and it's a hard life, and it knocks your confidence and it can drain you. And I've seen people fall by the wayside. You have to have some strength of character, I think, to be able to do it, unless you're really lucky, which some people just are. They just land on their feet, they'll start acting like yourself and finish up in a soap, or, you know, straight away they can finish up like that, whereas other people struggle for years. I mean, when I went on New Faces, I'd already been going 16 years. So I used to say it's taken me 16 years to be a new face. So, you know, it's a tough game, isn't it?
Yeah, it is tough. And it's hard when you sort of do an audition and you don't get it and things like that. Because I found out that I didn't get it through Twitter. The guy who got the part put it onto his social media page that he got it. And that's how I found out I didn't get it. So that's hard, because I know a lot of actors have said that they've had similar experiences where they find out they didn't get a job when the cast list gets announced.
Yes.
And it's quite hurtful, because it's like, well, if I didn't get it, that's fine, but you could let my agent know, and then my agent could let me know. So I know it through that, to sort of log on to Twitter one morning and see the actor who got it say been cast in The Panther in Blackpool, and it's like, well, I assume I didn't get it then. And and with all the theatres closed and that, there have been moments where I have sat back and questioned, is this what I want to do? Because when theatres do finally reopen, I think it's going to be harder to get work, because all these people are coming into the industry new, and they're all going through the same thing. And the industry sadly won't open up altogether. It's going to be a gradual process. So I've had to sort of sit back and think, is this what I want to do? And the answer was yes, and I will make it happen somehow. You know, if it takes a few years to get that break, it will take a few years, but it's what I want to do.
Well, that's it, mate. You're absolutely right. And in my, you know, because I was lucky really that my mum had this big dancing school, so I had a lot of experience in the amateur operatics and stuff. I was in South Pacific Brigadoon, The King and I, Oklahoma, Music Man, you know, all those lovely shows as amateurs. They used to go on at the Grand in Leeds for a couple of weeks. They used to put these shows on. And I used to love every minute of it, because I found that I could, even as a kid, I was happy to be in that atmosphere rather than playing football and rugby and stuff. And also in later life, I found that you got the pick of all the girls. I mean, for me, that was, you know what I mean? It was all these lovely girls and everything. So most of my romantic interludes, I'm happily married now. I've been over 20 years. We've got my son's 20, he'll be 21 this year. That they were all singers or dancers. I've never had a girlfriend that wasn't in the business. You know, because they don't understand. People don't understand. Even now, I'm walking about now, you having a holiday? I go, no, it's my job. I've got no money, you know. How do I pay the bills? I'm like you.
Yeah.
You know, they don't see us. They think you're in some kind of fantasy land. And also the other thing, what they think is you're bulletproof.
Yeah.
When you, especially as a comic, they can say anything they like to you and you don't get hurt. So I'll be walking around and sometimes they'll go, "Bah, you put some weight on. You're looking old," the girl, things like that. You wouldn't say that to a normal person,
no, I wouldn't. No.
But you know, every cloud. But no, it's a tough life, mate, and I take my cap off to you, and I wish you all the very best.
Thanks.
It's you know, I like to see young people coming into it. I think that there should be more opportunities, really. For young people to get a grip of it. It's a tough business now. You know, all this, the live side of it. If it was, you know, obviously the West End goes and these musicals are very popular. If you're good enough to start in that, then, you know, you could carry on having a big career out of it for a long, long time. We'd never, ever becoming a star. I mean, one of my ambitions would be to be in the West End, in something. It's one thing I've never, ever done. I've done Palladium. I've done that 3 or 4 times. I've done Royal Variety shows. I've done 5 children's royals. I've done loads of theatre tours and stuff like that, but I've never been in the West End in a show. I think that would be a feather in my cap. But it's probably a bit late now.
It's never too late. Never too late.
Well,
when the theatres reopen, just go down to all the shows and say you want a part in it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's you know, what I do can be go against you.
Yeah.
You know, they don't see a comic as a musical star or whatever, even though I sing and I used to be able to tap dance. I was a good tap. You should have a look at me tap dancing in the Working Men's Club in 1983. Just put.
I tried tap dancing and fell in the sink.
Well, there you go. You have to get your plug in. Yeah, so all that, but they don't see me as you know, the actor type. I've done bits. I was in Heartbeat. I played a painter and decorator. And my son was a burglar who was making copies of the keys that I was decorating and then going back a few weeks later and robbing them. So you know, little bits like that I've done, and but nothing ever. You know, I'd love to be in Emmerdale or something. They only record it up the road from here, but I keep asking and that, they're not interested. And I don't have an agent either plugging for me.
Yeah.
So that doesn't help. No. But it's only because over the years, mate, I've been ripped off. I've had it from a large height dropped onto my head, and you know, and then rubbed it in. And so in the end, I just thought, I can't do it. I'm paying them 20% of my earnings, and half the gigs I'm getting myself. So I knocked it on the head. So I don't have an agent for. In fact, I went to see somebody in Manchester. They saw me in the Rocky Horror, and I was in a Jimmy McGovern play on the telly. It was briefly. I was a typecast as a compere in a pub doing an auction. And but in the Rocky Horror, this casting lady came to see me, and that was the job that I got. But I had to go and have a meeting with this casting agency, and she was very nice. And then they sent me this contract, and I had to pay 20% on all my earnings, including my pantos. Yeah. Well, they haven't done. I'm not paying somebody 20%. But a job that I've been doing myself for 20 years. Do you know what I'm saying? Out the window. It's unfair. Another thing that I would say, which I said to Roy Walker, who's a mate of mine, Roy, and something had upset me, and somebody had let me down again. And I said, there's no loyalty in showbiz. You know, there's just no loyalty. And he said, if you want loyalty, buy a dog.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't expect loyalty because you won't get it. No. It's awful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
To say that. It is awful. I don't want to sound depressive about it.
No.
Brilliant. It's brilliant. It is brilliant. But I think if people go into, you know, thinking it's going to be a breeze and they're going to be a star tomorrow and all that, you can get your bubble burst very, very quickly.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for joining me.
With me now, aren't you? I can tell.
No. I don't want to keep you on too long. I don't want to keep you.
I'm winding you up.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a great chat. Very kind of you to give up your time. And hopefully I'll see you back on stage soon at some point. It'll be great to see you live again.
Well, if you do, love, come and say hello.
I will do, yeah.
And in the meantime, I wish you all the best. I hope that you get everything you wish for and what you deserve.
Okay, thank you. Okay.